Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and in this episode I was delighted to chat with Laura Lexx and Oliver Double about their upcoming podcast and YouTube show, The Comedy Bureau, which starts on September the 25th and is a deep dive on all things comedy. We talk about why they set up the show and everything that goes into launching a new show on YouTube. I started by asking both to give a brief intro to themselves.
Hiya, I'm Laura Lexx. I am predominantly a stand-up comedian, but I've also written a couple of books, Clop Actually and Pivot, both comedy books, one a novel, one what I've been asked to stop describing as a toilet book, but that is a toilet book. It's a book you read on the toilet. I'm also a podcaster. I do a podcast with my brother called Lexx Education, where my non-comedian brother teaches me science, and I'm just about to launch a new show called The Comedy Bureau with my professor of comedy, Dr. Oliver Double.
And I am that Dr. Oliver Double. And this is my official job title, Reader in Comic and Popular Performance at the University of Kent, which means basically I teach and research comedy as part of the drama degree here at the university. I also used to do stand-up many years ago, and I've never quite managed to kick the habit. So currently I am the host of a monthly club at the Gulbenkian called Funny Rabbit.
And looking at your background, I'm assuming that's real and not just a stock photo.
Mate, this is a problem. This is a genuine addiction. I can't. I've always got more books than shelf.
When we were putting together the set for the Comedy Bureau, I really wanted it to be a YouTube series, not just a podcast. And then with filming it, you've obviously got so many thoughts. And one thing I really didn't want was like the bro podcast, like lounging back in chairs with a big boom mic, that I was just like, I don't want us both in baseball caps like lounging and chatting about comedy. And then we started having meetings, and obviously you look at Ollie in that room with all those books behind him and you go, that's the Comedy Bureau, that's this little fire hazard of a room that I wanted the show to be in. He is the real deal.
17th now, so launches in just over a week on the 25th. I mean, what was the kind of spark for starting it?
From my perspective, I studied stand-up, so with Ollie, when I did my degree. And then, like, if I'm totally honest, and this is no shade to you, Ollie, was slightly embarrassed about having done that when I became a comedian, because the fallacy of comedians is that they're just naturally ebullient people who never sit down and write and panic over which noun is the funniest. It just spills off the cuff, when they get up. So I never made a big deal of having studied it, but just was quietly fascinated by it and love the nerdy. And I teach people comedy, if a newer comic wants coaching. But on the flip side of that, one of the things that constantly happens to you as a comedian is you get casting emails of interest going, we're looking for comedians with a background in nursing or background in X, Y, or Z. And I was like, but I'm a comedian with a background in comedy because I've always wanted to be a comedian and I've not really done much else other than comedy. And then I think I was driving home somewhere and I just thought, well, you're an idiot. Why are you not leaning into that? You're one of maybe 10 comedians that studied it in this much depth. Why aren't you thinking about it? And so I think I was in the middle of another big project and I emailed Ollie and just went, would you be interested in doing this, like getting really nerdy and just unapologetically nerdy? Like we're not sort of ever going to go, sorry, we went a bit in the weeds there. The weeds is the point. And it's just been lovely. I don't know why Ollie said yes.
I said yes because I've always been proud of Laura and, all the kind of graduates who I've taught. And, if there's ever an opportunity to work with graduates, it's awesome. But also because, I have done a bit of podcasting myself before, and I've written books about comedy, and it's what's really important to... a lot of my books have been published by academic publishers and they tend to cost a stupid amount of money and I have no control over that whatsoever. So it's heartbreaking really because you pour your heart and soul into a research project, and I work really hard to make my writing accessible as well so anybody could read it. But anybody can't always read it because the prices are really high of the books. Especially when they first come out and they're just available in hardback. It's a bit more affordable with the paperback versions. But anyway, the point is being able to put the ideas out there in a different way was something that was really appealing to me. But also I was like, this is going to be fun.
And you're talking about it being, a YouTube series as well as an audio podcast. I mean, do you think that that's changed a lot in the last maybe 12 months or so, where almost it's not a podcast unless it's got associated video with it?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of that's down to the publicising of it, really. My husband keeps telling me that YouTube is the biggest platform and it's the fastest growing. But my stupid brain just goes, ugh, who's watching videos? I would listen to everything. But this is my attempt to believe that other people think differently to me. But yeah, but the marketing of it, like reels and shorts and stuff, that's how you find your new audience. Like trying to do marketing with an audio only clip is incredibly difficult to reach people.
So are you comfortable with that? That it's weird that yes, normally this would have been a kind of like you said, two people sitting in a room chatting.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things about it is that to pick up on what Laura was saying earlier, it isn't just about the subject. This podcast, it's about the vibe, right? And we wanted it to be analog and cozy. And in the Comedy Bureau universe, which is on a par with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, smartphones don't exist. So you have to look at books and old magazines and newspapers, and you have to look at archive material as well. And that's part of the fun of it, because I think, one of the things I've noticed looking at students, I mean, videos, people love the people love watching videos on their phone or on the, it's easy to watch YouTube on your telly now. That didn't used to be a thing. People love all that stuff. But at the same time, what I've noticed working with young people kind of who are in their late teens, early 20s, I've noticed that there's a real appetite for the analog, I mean, there's the resurgence of vinyl would be an example. But also, notebooks. I mean, I've always got a physical notebook, always. But that's very normal. I mean, I am old, so you'd expect that. I'm a digital tourist. But, people who've grown up with smartphones still like stationery. And I think that Comedy Bureau leans into that.
Yeah, I think that's what we wanted, wasn't it? To just make this place that was somewhere you'd quite like to go and sit in the corner and be in the room while we were chatting it. Like you want to sit on the nice rug and you want to get the books. And like, it's amazing to me how we'll record an episode and then I find myself ordering the books that Ollie's been using to teach me, because you go, I want to read the rest of that. And I think that's a big part of what we wanted to do was go, there's this whole world of fascinating insight, because I think comedy is something pretty much everybody consumes every day, but nobody analyzes that much. And when you do suddenly analyze why you found a thing funny, or why you wanted to find it funny, or why someone wanted to make you laugh, you're suddenly studying the whole of human nature. You're not just talking about Mrs. Brown's Boys. It's representative of something much, much more fundamental about what we are as a species and what we've built as a society.
Yeah, and I think that comes across in the audio, but I also think the video is a way of sort of putting that kind of cozy, analog, sharing kind of vibe, that inclusive vibe. It makes it much more tangible, right?
Do you know what? I was watching this morning, Ollie, the master file of episode 5 to get it queued up to, schedule it. And there's a bit in that we're really deep in us sexy weeds there, because we're doing Koestler's incongruity theory, and you're explaining a bit, and in the video you just watch my face crumple because I don't understand what you're talking about, and then you kind of go, are you all right? And I go like, sorry, I'm so sorry, can we just... And then you take it back and we back it up line by line, and we go through it again, and it's nice to be able to go like, I'm a hand in the air, like I'm more expert than the average person on comedy, but I will come up against things I haven't got a clue how those words fit together until you make it accessible for me. And I think that's another thing we wanted to do, was just go like, books are not terrifying. Buying a book on comedy theory, you're not going to be sitting there going like, oh, panic, the sentences are flying over my head. It is accessible.
Yeah, and that's a classic technique that I use in my teaching at Kent is, You know, if I'm doing a lecture on comic theory, say, you put the scary quote up there, because some of them are. I mean, some of them were written sort of 500 years ago, and the language is really kind of archaic and complex, and it refers to a different world, really. And so what you do is you put that quote up there, and then you translate it. And actually, you don't just translate it; you show that it was difficult for you too. Because actually what this, you know, honestly, I don't want to be too kind of firebrand political about it, but this world is really scary at the moment. And I think having a space where people are kind and nice to each other is really important. And I think that's partly what we're trying to do with the Comedy Bureau. Yes, it's about comedy, but as Laura says, it's about the world we live in, because comedy reflects the world we live in. And we want to make the world a better place and not a worse one.
Yeah. You were saying, Laura, that, you know, you were kind of not embarrassed, but uncomfortable about kind of comedy theory. It's weird that, you know, if someone wrote a novel, people would study it and pick apart every single sentence, and that would be completely normal. But it almost feels that's just not what you do with comedy. Obviously,
Yeah.
Ollie, you literally do that with comedy.
Yeah.
You know, people kind of think, you know, it makes me laugh or it doesn't, and that's it. But in reality, you know, there's 101 things that go into it.
Well, it's funny. We were recording day before yesterday. We recorded an episode all about Richard Pryor. And we both sort of were stumbling around this idea that, like, because people like him, like he was one of the first big, you know, alternative comedians, he typified the archetypal comedian as renegade, comedian as going through his life at 110 miles an hour, being this wild person that you wouldn't have even thought of him sitting down at a desk and calmly writing out his material. It just poured out of this big heart, and you know, and I think comedy's never quite shaken off that world. Even now, like your James Acasters or your Nishes or Ivo Graham, where they are a bit more studious, you still, I think, you want to believe that there's a naturalness to it, even though you can much more easily imagine Phil Wang sitting down at a desk and writing studiously. There's still like an effortlessness to comedy that's required, and I think people want that, the fairy tale of it.
Yeah, I think people want to believe that it, as Laura says, it just comes out without any process to it. But clearly that can't be the case. And I think that comedians have always hidden the work that goes into it. Like, there's a famous story from the variety theatre era. I wrote a book about variety a few years ago. And it's a comedian's watching an acrobat doing something incredibly difficult in the rehearsal before the opening night. And he turns to the person next to him and says, "Look at that, just because they're too lazy to learn a comic song." Right. And the thing about that is that when you see the acrobat doing something amazing, you know there's skill involved and you know there's labour gone into that. But the person who does the comic song, or what we'd say today, does a stand-up bit, you want to believe that it's just, oh no, they're just throwing this out. It'll be completely different tomorrow. It'll be like a different 2 hours. That's clearly not the case. I also think there's a famous quote which is analysing comedies like dissecting a frog. You don't learn very much and the frog dies, right? I think that was E.B. White came up with that, although lots of people have claimed it. But the thing is, I have been analysing comedy for far too long, right? I'm old and I've been doing it most of my life. And it doesn't make me love comedy any less. I find comedy funnier, if anything, now than I used to before. It makes you appreciate it more richly, I think.
I think it's to do with a vulnerability. If you allow someone to make you laugh, you have been vulnerable. And I think there's an unwillingness to admit that what they did was manipulate you. You want it to be pure, so you'd prefer to believe you had a relationship with them than a paid-for interaction.
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing. I once saw Billy Connolly at the Apollo in London, and he was talking about somebody he knew, and he went, "You'd love them." And I was like, surely that can't be true. There's 3,000 people in this theatre. We wouldn't all love that person. And actually, the reason I picked up on it, he was brilliant. It's not a criticism, but it's like the fiction is that we're just having a conversation. There's just somebody. Yeah. It just happens that the person we're having a conversation with is on the stage. But like, it suddenly you go. Sometimes somebody says something and you go, well, that the fiction's just become implausible. We wouldn't all love that person, I'm sure of it. Some of us would be bloody annoyed by them.
Yeah. You're saying about your book, I think the paperbacks come out as well, the Cambridge Companion to Stand-Up Comedy.
Yeah.
I was having a look on Amazon. I don't know if you know, it's under the psychology of sexual behaviour as a sex thing.
I'm all about the psychology of sexual behaviour. That's totally me. No, I mean, that says much more about algorithms than it does about the beautiful analogue world of the comedy.
Yes. I was wondering, is that a help or a hindrance? I don't know.
Probably a hindrance, because somebody who's going there to learn about human sexuality is... Well, actually, no, there is a chapter. There is a chapter on stand-up and sexuality, which is primarily about LGBTQ plus comedians. So it's not that it's not covered, but I don't think it's primarily about that. There are lots of chapters in there, and that's one of them.
Talking about kind of, funny, but an academic kind of, or a kind of a thoughtful, is probably the better way to say it, kind of look at comedy and all those kind of things. I was just wondering kind of your thoughts on AI, because obviously if something can be broken down and studied, then that is where a machine can kind of come in. Is that a risk, a benefit, or anything of kind of, where AI can step in terms of comedy?
Shall I start with that one?
Yeah.
I wish we could uninvent AI. In fact, no, I don't. I think AI is brilliant for doing things like medical advances and things like that. But I think the idea of using it to replace artists is a dreadful idea. I would also say this. I came across a research project where somebody was using AI to generate stand-up material, and they were trying out these jokes. One of the jokes, I was like, hold on, that's a joke. That's not a AI joke. The AI has scraped that from somebody who's put it on a dad's favourite jokes forum or something. Yeah, I don't even... People have that thing where they go, oh, I use the AI just for the first draft and then I just work it up myself. And I kind of go, well, why would you do that? That's the creative bit. I know it's hard. Good things are. I would also, on a more serious level, say I'm not sure how good AI is ever going to be at doing stand-up, because stand-up, Laura said before, agonising about the choice of noun that you use in a punch. It's all about nuance. If you ask ChatGPT, I wanted to do a comic song where basically it was going to be jokes provided by ChatGPT that were going to be comically bad. But I found that they weren't even comically bad. They were just bland, and they all tend to be in a riddle format and things. I think there's a huge sophistication in stand-up that is about reading the room and connecting with the audience, and a really, really heightened sense of how the culture around you works. And that's all the stuff, and how your own experiences work. I don't know how AI could do that. And finally, I would say that there are moments in stand-up where AI couldn't do it. So Laura's talking about Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor does this amazing routine in his brilliant film Live in Concert where he imitates a deer that's frightened in the forest. AI couldn't do that. An AI-generated avatar could not do what he does there. I don't think ever. Hopefully never.
Yeah, I think I don't know enough about the future of AI and where it's going to perhaps feel as adamantly as Ollie. I think my nervousness around it is what's the point of humour generated by AI? I think the point of humour is human connection. And if you do that without the human creation, I struggle to see why I'd care. So I think that's where I sit at the moment. I think I'm a little less nervous than you, Ollie, like in the whole generation, this might make you want to quit the project, but when I was trying to come up with the name for the Comedy Bureau, I asked ChatGPT, give me 20 possible names for a comedy thing, and I hated all of them, but they made my brain fire. So I think, and I have a lot of friends in the tech industry where it is speeding up code production to allow them to be more creative, and I think I'm trying not to be too Luddite, because I am scared of it. My physical reaction is fear. And I'm trying to think, people used to be scared of sewing machines, Laura, and it's been fine since sewing machines. So I'm trying to tell myself that. But I think I come back to, what's the point if you take that away? A stand-up comedy night is about people seeking something all together, an audience all seeking things, a comedian seeking connection. It comes back to humanity, and I struggle to understand why we'd bother if you've removed the humanity from it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree.
Go back to actually, the launch of the podcast and everything. I mean, you were talking about kind of editing or kind of putting episode 5 already up. I mean, how many have you got already in the bank? And do you see this as something that's going to have seasons of 10 episodes and, you come back and have a break?
Yes, absolutely. So if I've learned one thing from doing Lexx education, it's that running continuously is exhausting and your legs get tired. And because there's a huge amount of research, mainly by Ollie. Ollie does the legwork on most of the deep dives. There's a huge amount of work going in, and we want the episodes to be worth something. So we can't just rock up and go, oh, let's just chat off our heads. Other people are doing that. That's not what we're trying to do. So we are going to be doing it in seasons of 10. We're starting 25th of September. We're going to drop 3 episodes on day 1 to give you a taster of a bit more, and then that will run up to November. We're going to have a break. Then we're going to start again in January with another 10 episodes, and I think we've recorded up to the end of season 2 already. Then we'll have a little break, and then we will start season 3. So we're aiming to do 30 episodes a year, broken into 10 episode chunks, just to make sure that each episode has the attention we want to give it.
And in terms of promotion, because obviously that's a big undertaking, that's a serious amount of time. What kind of things are you looking at? Chopping it up for social media, more traditional PR and press and all the rest of it. I mean, how have you kind of found that?
It's been quite difficult, but I've gone for external help with the marketing. So I've worked with a traditional media comedy PR, Julian Hall, who I've worked with before when I've done the Edinburgh Fringe. He's often been my PR for that. So he's been really great in terms of hooking us up with podcast opportunities, and pitching it out to the comedy world like Chortle or the British Comedy Guide and things like that. Then we've also worked with a brilliant team at Podspike who are podcast marketing. So they have been beavering away in doing reaching out to tech influencers and comedy journalists in the podcasting and tech world. But it's meticulous. It's not like the days of write a press release and send it out. I did individual 2-camera videos for every single journalist that we approached. I had a sheet about them, found out a little bit about who they were, what they were interested in, and then talked directly to them, to try and get them to do a review. And then with each episode, we've chopped out 2 clips to give you a taster. And then Ollie and I also recorded a lot of 2-camera sort of tasters. We've tried to be a bit clickbaity as our skin crawlingness will allow us to be with the titling of episodes. So we've got episodes like Are Women Funny and Is Woke Killing Comedy? And
answer, yes, they are. No, it isn't.
No, it's not. Yeah, don't listen to the episodes. No, you don't need to.
Is that the right way around?
Yeah. But also,
it's definitely the right way around if I get it the wrong way around.
It's about not running from the things that my immediacy is to go, I don't care and I don't know because I don't understand. Like the YouTube thumbnails are incredibly important. So we've hired somebody who understands YouTube and YouTube thumbnails and made what is supposed to work. Because left to my own devices, I'd go, I don't care. Ugh. I think that's a stupid thing, therefore I won't try. And then I think that's where you shoot yourself in the foot. So where my instinct is to go, I don't get it, so what's the point? I've tried to hire somebody that does care and does get it.
And without trying to run before you can walk, I mean, do you see this as a kind of live in-person thing as well, possibly?
Yes, I always run before I could walk. In fact, before we even finished recording series 1, I said to Ollie, we need to write a book, Ollie. And I started pitching the book that we were going to try and have on sale ready for Christmas 2027. So I love running before I can walk. I lie on my back and pedal my legs. Yeah, I think it would be great. I absolutely could see us at the Edinburgh Fringe on a stage chatting this and recording live episodes. I can see us doing Cheerful If or Podcast Festival, the London Podcast Festival. I cannot see why not at all. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've had a bit of experience of doing kind of in conversation events with comedians. 10 years ago at the Fringe, I did sort of 6, I think it was, at the Assembly Rooms, and I've done them. I've done them for years and years, and so I'm really comfortable about that thing of being in a chat mode in front of an audience. And I would absolutely relish doing these if it comes to that, doing these recordings with Laura.
I think that's the nice thing about podcasting world, though, is like my podcast, Lexx Education, is a very small podcast in the scheme of podcasting. But like Cheerful Earful that I mentioned before, that's a podcast festival that runs at the Bedford in Balham once a year. And Ron and I do that every year. He has rooms from, I think, 30 audience members up to 200. So because of that parasocial relationship that you're creating with your listeners, it's not like the world where you'd have to be big enough to play the Royal Albert Hall to do a live version of your show. As long as you're both comfortable with not making any money off it, which we're a lecturer and a stand-up comedian, we are happy in that world. We don't have to have a level of success in order to have these dreams. You just do them to the people that want it, which I think is so wonderful about the tech space with comedy.
Yes. If I can just finish one, kind of a technical kind of thing, which, I can imagine with you two, you could probably talk for another hour on. I saw a thing on Threads. It was Paul Sinner did a joke. I don't know if you saw it about, I'll obviously murder this, but he goes, I can't believe Diane Morgan's done this series called Mandy. It's completely outrageous about someone who continuously fails at their job but keeps getting another one. Now, obviously, the joke there is Peter Mandelson, and you kind of start at one point and you go, why is he slagging off Diane Morgan? This is a bit weird. And then you kind of get to the punchline. But obviously, it requires you to know certain things. So obviously, on the internet, there's all sorts of people who kind of don't get the joke. And I was just kind of wondering about kind of when you target a joke, do you kind of worry or not worry about kind of people not getting it? If 10% of people think that's fantastic, 50% of people, it passes them by, and the rest kind of think, well, you're an idiot. Does it matter if some people get it and, it kind of works that way?
From my perspective, that depends on the job I've been hired to do. So if I've been hired to host the Comedy Store on a Saturday night, my job is to be as broad to the people in front of me as possible, in my opinion. If I am doing my hour-long show in Edinburgh, my job is to be as me as possible, because I will assume that people that have come to see me want my meest me. I think on social media, it depends. I don't think Paul... Actually, I won't speak for Paul because I don't know, but like Paul is very content in who he is as a comedian. He has his brand. He has this smartness, and I think I would doubt he was using jokes on social media to try and garner new audience. He is siphoning off thoughts and jokes that are interesting and of the time. And I think in that case, I don't think it matters that people don't get it. They've not been shortchanged. It was a free offering, and it's there if you like it, and if you don't, you have to be adult enough to go, I didn't get it, or it wasn't for me, and walk away. You cannot expect universality from the internet.
Yeah, I think another thing that's worth saying is that there are things that happen in a room when you're performing stand-up where you could read the audience response. It's not just whether you get a laugh or not. You can hear the tone of the laugh. And you can't do that with social media. It's just words. There's that nuance, that connection, that communication isn't there in the same way. But I mean, I've always thought really carefully and hard about what I say on stage, and try and say things that are kind of that match my worldview, that don't alienate people who don't deserve to be alienated. It's sometimes hard, but it's the right path, I think, personally.
Yeah. I think that's the difficulty with comedy. I think comedy is really interesting in terms of, are you responsible for making as many people laugh as you can, or do you have a thing that you wish to pursue as what you do as comedy, and you're fine with, they will, if you build it, they will come? Or are you trying to appeal to the masses? And I think a beautiful thing is that there's space for all of that. There's space for one comedian to do all of that. Most of us do that. Most of us earn our bread and butter through the year, rocking up to whatever town hall has a comedy night on that night, and just doing your best to make the most of them laugh as possible, because that's how you get rebooked and that's how you pay your mortgage. But then we all go on tour and go, actually, this is going to be a little bit different to that. This is going to be more what comes from my soul. And I guess that's just most jobs are that, really, aren't they?
Thanks to Laura and Oliver for being on the podcast. You can find links to both of them and also all details about the Comedy Bureau in the show notes. The show itself launches at 7 p.m. on the 25th of September, but trailers are already available. Thanks for listening.